The moment Linda stood up at that Sunday dinner and announced I was uninvited from Thanksgiving for being too difficult, I watched my brother Ryan avoid my eyes while their daughter Jessica smirked into her phone. What they didn't know was that the automatic payment I'd been making for 6 years on their mortgage, the one keeping that roof over their entitled heads, was about to stop. And when it did, they'd discover that my late parents hadn't left them the house at all. They'd left them a choice, and a timer that started ticking the second Linda opened her mouth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm done being the family ATM. The dining room at 847 Maple Ridge Drive had once been my favorite place in the world. Mom's china cabinet still stood against the far wall, though Linda had replaced the contents with her own modern dishware. Dad's handcrafted table remained, scarred with memories of homework sessions and holiday meals, now covered with Linda's designer tablecloth that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I'd driven across town that Sunday evening because Ryan said it was important. Family meeting, he'd texted. Need to discuss Thanksgiving plans. I should have known something was wrong when I arrived to find not just Ryan and Linda, but her sister Diane and brother-in-law Brian already seated, drinks in hand, looking like a tribunal. Linda didn't waste time with pleasantries. She set down her wine glass with a deliberate click that echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Emily, we've been talking, and we think it's best if you don't come to Thanksgiving this year. The words hung in the air like smoke. The country club has limited seating, and honestly, your attitude lately has been exhausting for everyone. My attitude. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to laugh, to tell me this was some kind of joke. He studied his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. Their 16-year-old daughter Jessica didn't even glance up from her phone, just continued scrolling with that bored expression teenagers perfect. What attitude? I asked, keeping my voice level. The one where I ask why the temporary help I promised 6 years ago is still happening? The one where I mentioned that $3,200 a month might be something we should discuss? Linda's perfectly microbladed eyebrows rose. See? This is exactly what we mean. Everything is about money with you. Your parents would be ashamed of how materialistic you've become. She said it so smoothly, with such practiced concern, that for a moment I almost questioned myself. Almost. Diane nodded supportively. Family shouldn't keep score, Emily. It's unbecoming. This coming from a woman who'd borrowed $5,000 from me 2 years ago for her daughter's wedding and had never mentioned paying it back. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the same sensation I'd experienced at Mom and Dad's funeral 6 years ago when Linda had immediately started talking about moving into their house. The same feeling I'd had when Ryan asked me to cover just one mortgage payment while they got settled. The same hollow ache that had grown each month as temporary became permanent, and gratitude became entitlement. Ryan finally spoke, his voice quiet. Maybe it's better this way. Less stress for everyone. We're having the Fosters and Linda's parents. It'll be crowded anyway. He still couldn't meet my eyes. My older brother, who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd walked me down the aisle at my college roommate's wedding when she'd needed a stand-in, couldn't look at me while uninviting me from Thanksgiving. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 6 years of monthly payments, of being told I was family while being treated like a checkbook, of watching my parents' home transform into Linda's showpiece while their memory faded from every room. The rage that had been building found its voice, calm and cold. Okay, I said simply. If I'm too difficult to have at Thanksgiving, then I'm too difficult to keep paying your mortgage. The room went silent. Linda's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. That's not funny, Emily, she said, but her voice had lost its smooth confidence. You wouldn't do that. We had an agreement. We're family. Did we? I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. Because I don't remember signing anything. I remember my brother asking for help during a tough time. I remember being told it would be temporary. I remember 6 years of $3,200 payments. That's $230,400, Linda. Do you remember thanking me even once this year? Brian shifted uncomfortably. Emily, let's not be hasty. I'm sure Linda didn't mean it that way. But I could see it in his eyes, the same calculation I'd seen in Linda's. They'd gotten comfortable. The money had become expected, then demanded, then forgotten as anything remarkable. I'm not being hasty, I replied, fingers moving across my phone screen. I'm being clear. You don't want me at Thanksgiving? Fine. But the bank doesn't care about family drama. Your November payment is due in 9 days. I just canceled the automatic transfer. I held up my phone, showing the confirmation screen. Scheduled payment canceled. Effective immediately. Linda stood so quickly her chair scraped against the hardwood floor Dad had refinished the year before he died. You can't do this. We have Jessica to think about. Where will we go? I looked at my niece, still absorbed in her phone, completely indifferent to the adult conversations swirling around her. The same niece who'd called me Aunt Emmy until Linda had apparently decided I wasn't worth basic courtesy anymore. Maybe you should have thought about that before uninviting me for being difficult, I said. Ryan found his voice, anger finally pushing through his passivity. This is our home, Emily. Mom and Dad left it to us. You're just helping with expenses until we get established. 6 years, Ryan. You've been established. You're hosting Thanksgiving at the country club. Linda drives a Range Rover. Jessica has the newest iPhone. You're established. You're just comfortable spending my money. I walked toward the door, past the family photos Linda had slowly replaced with professional portraits that didn't include me, past Mom's favorite reading chair that now held Linda's designer handbags, past the life I'd been subsidizing while being slowly erased from it. The mortgage payment is due December 1st, I said without turning around. 9 days. Figure it out. Emily, wait, Ryan called, but I was already in the hallway, already out the door, already in my car, already done. As I drove back to my downtown loft, my phone erupted with texts. Angry messages from Linda. Pleading ones from Ryan. A surprisingly vicious one from Diane calling me selfish and heartless. I silenced them all. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know yet, was that I'd spent the last 3 months quietly preparing for this exact moment. Because I'd finally done what I should have done 6 years ago. I'd hired a lawyer, pulled the original estate documents, and discovered something Linda and Ryan had been very careful never to mention. Something that changed everything. My parents' will wasn't what anyone thought it was. And Thomas Hayes, the attorney who'd handled their estate, had been waiting for me to ask the right questions. Tomorrow, I'd get those answers. Tonight, I went home and made a call to First Pacific Bank, requesting a complete history of every payment I'd ever made on that mortgage, every transaction, every record. The woman on the phone was helpful and efficient. I'd have everything by morning. Then I texted Thomas Hayes. I'm ready to know the truth. Meet tomorrow at 9? His response came within minutes. Been waiting 6 years for you to ask. See you at 9. Bring tissues. You're going to need them. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I kept for special occasions, and stood at my loft window overlooking the Portland skyline. Somewhere across town, Linda was probably panicking, Ryan was probably drinking, and their comfortable life built on my monthly payments was beginning to crack. They thought I was being difficult. They had no idea what difficult actually looked like. But they were about to learn. Because my parents hadn't just left a house. They'd left instructions, protections, and one very specific clause about what would happen if anyone ever tried to push their daughter out of the family she'd worked so hard to preserve. The game had started the moment Linda uninvited me. She just didn't know she'd already lost. Thomas Hayes's law office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building in Pioneer Square that had probably been standing since Portland was founded. The elevator creaked as it lifted me upward that Tuesday morning, and I clutched my folder of bank statements like a shield. I'd barely slept, my mind churning through 6 years of memories, trying to pinpoint exactly when helping family had transformed into being exploited by them. The receptionist, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, smiled as I entered. Miss Carter, Mr. Hayes is expecting you. He asked me to tell you that he's glad you're finally here. She led me down a hallway lined with photographs of old Portland, back when the Pearl District was warehouses instead of lofts, when families built legacies instead of dismantling them. Thomas Hayes looked exactly as I remembered from the funeral, though perhaps more gray had crept into his temples. He'd been my parents' attorney for 30 years, had drafted their wills, handled their business affairs, and stood beside me at the cemetery while Linda had already been on her phone, probably calculating square footage. He stood when I entered, gesturing to a leather chair across from his massive oak desk. "Emily," he said warmly, then his expression shifted to something harder. "Tell me everything." I spent 20 minutes laying it out. The car accident that killed both parents instantly on a rainy March evening. Ryan's immediate assumption that he and Linda would move into the family home. My offer to help with the mortgage temporarily while they grieved and got settled. The first payment that became the second, then the 12th, then the 72nd. The gradual erasure of our parents' presence from their own house. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The transformation of gratitude into expectation into contempt. And finally, Sunday's dinner, the uninvitation, Linda's casual cruelty about my attitude. Thomas listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled, his face unreadable. When I finished, he opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file folder, the tab labeled Carter Estate, Robert and Margaret. He set it between us like evidence at a trial. "Emily, what did Ryan tell you about your parents' will?" I frowned. "That they left the house to him. That as the oldest, he inherited the property. That I got some savings bonds and mom's jewelry, but the house went to him because he had a family, needed the space." Thomas's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or vindication. "Did you ever read the actual will?" My stomach dropped. "No," I admitted. "Ryan handled everything. He said it was too painful for me, that he'd take care of the legal stuff." I was 26, Thomas. I just lost both parents. I trusted him. Thomas nodded slowly, then opened the file and extracted a document, sliding it across the desk. "This is your parents' last will and testament, executed 14 months before their death. Read Section 4, Paragraph 2. My hands trembled as I picked up the papers. The legal language was dense, but Section 4 was marked with a yellow tab, and as I read, the room seemed to tilt. "The primary residence located at 847 Maple Ridge Drive, Portland, Oregon, is hereby bequeathed equally to our children, Ryan Michael Carter and Emily Rose Carter, to be held as tenants in common, with the following conditions. Each shall own an undivided 50% interest in the property. Should one child wish to reside in the property, they must either buy out the other's share at fair market value within 1 year, or pay equivalent monthly rent to the non-residing co-owner, said rent to be no less than 50% of fair market rental value for a comparable property." I read it 3 times. "They left me half the house." The words came out as a whisper. "Ryan told me he inherited it." "He lied." Thomas leaned back in his chair. "Ryan didn't just lie, Emily. He committed fraud. He presented himself as sole owner when applying for that mortgage. He refinanced your parents' original loan without your knowledge or consent. He forged your signature on documents relinquishing your claim. I have copies of everything." He slid another stack of papers across. "Bank records showing the refinance. A quitclaim deed with my signature that looked nothing like my actual handwriting. Loan applications listing Ryan as sole heir. Why didn't you stop him?" The question came out harsher than I intended. "You knew what the will said. You were the executor." "I tried," Thomas said quietly. "I sent you registered letters. 3 of them. All returned as undeliverable. I called the phone number I had for you, but it had been disconnected. I even drove to your old apartment, but the landlord said you'd moved and left no forwarding address." His expression was pained. "I assumed you knew what was happening and had agreed to it. By the time I realized Ryan had systematically cut off my access to you, the The refinance was complete. I've been waiting 6 years for you to walk through that door. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The disconnected phone had been my old college number I'd changed after graduation. The apartment I'd moved out of right after the funeral, too full of memories. The letters sent to an address I no longer occupied. Ryan had known I was unreachable, had used those few months of my grief and transition to complete his theft. And Linda, I said. She knew. She had to know. Thomas opened another section of the file. Linda knew everything. I have emails between her and Ryan discussing how to handle the situation if you ever found out. They called it the Emily problem. The emails were dated from 6 months after the funeral, casual discussions of my legal claim like I was an obstacle to remove rather than family to consider. Linda had even suggested they could claim I'd verbally agreed to give up my share, that my payments toward the mortgage proved I saw myself as helping, not as an owner. So for 6 years, I said slowly, I've been paying $3,200 a month toward a mortgage on a house I own half of. A house where I should have been collecting rent if Ryan wanted to live there. What's fair market rent for a place like that? Thomas pulled up a real estate website on his computer, showing comparable properties in the Maple Ridge neighborhood. For a 4-bedroom house in that area, you're looking at minimum $4,000 a month. Your share would be $2,000. So instead of paying $3,200 out, you should have been receiving $2,000 in. His calculator clacked as he ran numbers. Over 72 months, you've lost $314,400. That's what you've paid out plus what you should have received. I felt dizzy. Over $300,000. That's not counting the equity, Thomas added. The house was worth $500,000 when your parents died. It's worth $675,000 now. Your half of the equity gain is $87,500. Add it all up, and your brother has stolen over $400,000 from you. Stolen. The word landed like a physical blow. What can I do? Thomas's expression shifted into something predatory, the look of an attorney who'd been waiting years to spring a trap. Your parents, God rest them, were smart people. They knew Ryan had always been easily influenced. They built protections into the will. He flipped to another marked section. Read Section 8. Section 8 was titled Dispute Resolution and Remedies. The language made my pulse quicken. In the event that any beneficiary attempts to defraud, deceive, or unlawfully deprive another beneficiary of their rightful inheritance, the offending party shall forfeit their entire share of the estate, said share to transfer immediately and completely to the wronged party. Furthermore, the offending party shall be liable for all financial damages, legal fees, and punitive damages as determined by a court of competent jurisdiction. They built in a nuclear option, I breathed. If Ryan defrauded me, I get everything. Thomas nodded. Everything. The house becomes solely yours. He owes you every penny you paid, plus the rent you should have received, plus your legal fees, plus whatever punitive damages a judge decides. And Emily, he leaned forward, his voice intense, with the evidence I have, this case is airtight. The forged signature alone is a felony. The fraudulent loan application is bank fraud. The systematic isolation to prevent you from learning the truth shows premeditation. Ryan and Linda didn't just make a mistake. They executed a plan. I thought about Sunday dinner, about Linda's smug face as she uninvited me, about Ryan's cowardice as he let it happen, about Jessica's indifference to her aunt being discarded. They'd gotten so comfortable in their theft that they'd forgotten I was a person with rights, with feelings, with the ability to fight back. What do we do first? I asked. Thomas smiled, and it wasn't kind. First, we file a lawsuit. Quiet, quick, and comprehensive. Fraud, conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment. We demand an accounting of all funds, an immediate halt to any transactions involving the property, and a forensic audit of the estate. Second, we place a lien on the house. Ryan won't be able to sell, refinance, or transfer it without settling with you first. Third, we contact the mortgage company and inform them of the fraudulent application. That mortgage is in Ryan's name only, based on his claim of sole ownership. The bank will not be happy. When can we start? I asked, and my voice sounded strange, harder than I'd ever heard it. We already have, Thomas said, turning his computer screen toward me. I filed the preliminary paperwork this morning, as soon as you confirmed our meeting. I've been preparing this case for 6 years, Emily. Every document, every precedent, every strategy. Your brother made one crucial mistake. He underestimated how much your parents loved you, and how carefully they protected you. The lawsuit will be served tomorrow. Ryan and Linda will receive it by courier at noon. Thanksgiving Day. The poetic justice of it wasn't lost on me. While they sat at the country club, probably celebrating their successful elimination of the difficult sister, a process server would be handing them papers that could cost them everything. How long until this is resolved? I asked. Thomas considered. With the evidence this clear, I'd estimate 6 months if they fight, or they could settle immediately if they're smart. But Emily, he fixed me with a serious look, you need to understand what this will do to your family. Ryan could face criminal charges. They'll lose the house. Their finances will be destroyed. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my parents, about how hard they'd worked to build something to pass down to their children. About how they'd tried to be fair, to protect both of us, to ensure we'd take care of each other. And I thought about how Ryan and Linda had taken that gift and twisted it into theft, had erased me while spending my money, had finally thrown me away when I dared to question the arrangement. I'm prepared, I said firmly. They made their choice on Sunday. I'm just making mine now. Thomas extended his hand. Then let's get your life back. As we shook on it, I felt 6 years of weight begin to lift. The difficult sister was done being convenient. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving. Ryan and Linda were about to learn what it meant to be truly grateful, and what it cost to forget. The call from Rebecca Zhang came at 7 a.m. on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. Emily, she said without preamble, you need to see what I found. I'm sending you an encrypted file right now. Her voice carried that particular tension accountants get when numbers tell a story no one wants to hear. I sat up in bed, reaching for my laptop. Rebecca had been my best friend since college, had stood beside me at my parents' funeral, and had watched with increasing concern as my monthly mortgage payments continued year after year. When I'd told her about Sunday's dinner and Thomas Hayes's revelations, she'd offered immediately to dig into Ryan and Linda's finances. What am I looking at? I asked as the file downloaded. Tax returns, Rebecca said. Ryan and Linda's joint returns for the past 6 years. Emily, they've been claiming the mortgage interest deduction. Every year. $38,000 in deductions they weren't entitled to because you were making the payments. That's tax fraud. And there's more. Credit card statements, bank records, everything I could pull legally. They've been living well beyond their declared income. The spreadsheet that opened on my screen was color-coded, meticulous, damning. Rebecca had tracked every dollar, cross-referenced every deposit and withdrawal. Monthly income versus monthly expenses created a gap of roughly $4,000. A gap perfectly filled by the mortgage payment I made and the money they weren't spending on housing. Look at May of last year, Rebecca continued. Ryan declared income of $82,000 from his sales job. But their spending that month was $11,000. New furniture, country club dues, Jessica's private orthodontist. The math doesn't work unless someone else is covering their biggest expense. I scrolled through the months, seeing the pattern repeat. Vacation to Hawaii. Linda's Range Rover lease. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, a lifestyle funded by my invisible subsidy. They've been laundering your generosity into their lifestyle, Rebecca said bluntly. And they got so comfortable they forgot it could end. Can Thomas use this? I asked, already knowing the answer. Already sent it to him an hour ago, Rebecca replied. He called it the gift that keeps on giving. Emily, there's something else. I found the original loan application Ryan submitted when he refinanced. He claimed household income of $150,000 annually. His actual income that year was $79,000. He inflated it by nearly double. That's not a mistake. That's deliberate fraud. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Thomas. Office at 10. Bring Rebecca. Strategy session. We had 3 hours before the meeting, so I did what any reasonable person would do when discovering their family's betrayal ran even deeper than imagined. I drove to the cemetery. Cedar Hill Cemetery sat on a hillside overlooking the city, peaceful and green even in November. My parents' graves were side by side under an oak tree they'd picked out together years before they'd needed them, the kind of morbid practicality that had defined their approach to life. Margaret and Carter, beloved wife and mother. Robert James Carter, devoted husband and father. The dates of their births and deaths carved into granite that would outlast all of us. I sat on the damp grass between their headstones, not caring that the moisture soaked through my jeans. Mom, Dad, I said quietly, feeling only slightly ridiculous for talking to stone and earth. I found out what Ryan did. I found out about the will, about the house, about everything. The oak tree rustled above me, dropping a few remaining leaves. I'm sorry I didn't figure it out sooner. I'm sorry I let him steal from both of us. The guilt had been building since yesterday's meeting with Thomas. 6 years. 6 years I could have stopped this if I'd just asked the right questions, demanded to see the actual will, insisted on being part of the estate process instead of letting grief make me passive. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Ryan had counted on my grief, had weaponized my trust, had used the fact that I'd loved my parents too much to think clearly in those first terrible months. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album I kept of them. Mom in her garden, hands dirty, smile bright. Dad at his workbench in the garage, building something, always building. The two of them on their 35th anniversary, looking at each other like newlyweds. They'd worked so hard to build something stable, something to pass on. And Ryan had dismantled it for a bigger house and a country club membership. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost declined, then reconsidered. Emily Carter, I answered. Miss Carter, a professional female voice said, "This is Jennifer Walsh from First Pacific Bank, Mortgage Division. I'm calling regarding the property at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. We received some concerning documentation this morning from a Thomas Hayes, attorney at law." I stood, brushing grass from my jeans. What kind of documentation? A claim that the mortgage application submitted by Ryan Carter in 2017 contained fraudulent information, specifically regarding ownership of the property and household income. We take these allegations very seriously. I'm calling to inform you that we've frozen the account pending investigation. No payments can be processed, and no modifications can be made to the loan until this is resolved. Does Ryan know? I asked. He was notified by email 1 hour ago, Ms. Walsh said. I expect he'll be calling you shortly. I wanted to reach you first to explain that you're listed in the attorney's filing as the rightful co-owner who was excluded from the loan process. Is that accurate? Completely accurate, I confirmed. I own 50% of that property per my parents' will. Ryan refinanced without my knowledge or consent using forged documents. There was a pause, then Ms. Walsh's voice hardened with professional displeasure. Miss Carter, if what you're saying is verified, your brother committed bank fraud. We'll be conducting a full investigation and will likely be referring this to law enforcement. In the meantime, the mortgage is in default status. The December payment will not be processed, and the loan will begin accruing late fees and penalties. I thought about Ryan receiving that email, about Linda's face when she realized the free ride had crashed. How long before foreclosure proceedings begin? I asked. Typically 90 days of non-payment, Ms. Walsh said. However, given the fraud allegations, we may accelerate that timeline. She paused again. Miss Carter, I shouldn't say this, but I've been in mortgage lending for 18 years. I've seen too many families tear each other apart over property. Whatever your brother did, I hope you get justice. After we hung up, I stayed at my parents' graves a while longer. The morning sun had burned through the cloud cover, warming the hillside. A few other visitors moved quietly among the headstones, bringing flowers, saying prayers, maintaining connections that death couldn't sever. You built protections for me, I said to my parents. You knew Ryan might do something like this. You knew, and you tried to stop it. I'm sorry it took me so long to use them. My phone erupted with texts. Ryan's name appeared again and again, messages loading faster than I could read them. Call me right now. What did you do? The bank froze everything. Emily, this isn't funny. You're destroying our family. That last one almost made me laugh. I was destroying the family. Not him, with his fraud and theft. Not Linda, with her casual cruelty. Me, for finally saying enough. I drove to Thomas's office with Rebecca, who'd brought 3 more folders of documentation she'd compiled overnight. She handed them to me at a red light. Property records showing the house's appreciation. Comparable sales in the neighborhood. A calculation of fair market rent going back 6 years, complete with citations from Portland's rental market reports. Your brother owes you $402,000, she said. That's my conservative estimate. An aggressive attorney could push for more. The conference room at Hayes and Associates held more people than I expected. Thomas sat at the head of the table, but beside him was a woman I didn't recognize, late 30s, sharp-eyed, with a leather portfolio that screamed investigator. Emily, Rebecca, Thomas said, standing. This is Angela Morrison. Private investigator. She's been helping me compile evidence. Angela shook my hand with a grip that meant business. Miss Carter, I've spent the last 18 hours documenting your brother's activities. What I found goes beyond simple fraud. She opened her portfolio, spreading photographs across the table. These were taken yesterday and this morning. Ryan meeting with a real estate agent. Linda at the bank, attempting to access a safety deposit box that's probably not in her name. Your brother at a title company, trying to get information about quick sale processes. They're trying to sell the house, I said, though it wasn't really a question. Before you can stop them, Angela confirmed. The real estate agent is Sandra Mitchell, works for Premium Properties. She specializes in quick sales, estate liquidations, properties that need to move fast. I spoke with her this morning, posing as a potential client. She told me she had a listing coming up, great house in Maple Ridge, motivated sellers, under market price for quick close. Thomas's expression was grim. They're panicking. The bank freeze hit them hard. They know something's wrong but don't understand the full scope yet. They think if they can sell fast, they can pay you off and disappear with the profit. What they don't know is that I filed a lease pendens yesterday afternoon. It's public record now. No one can buy that house with a clear title. What's a lease pendens? Rebecca asked. Legal notice that there's a lawsuit affecting the property, Thomas explained. Any buyer doing even basic due diligence will find it and run away. The house is effectively unsellable until our case is resolved. Ryan and Linda are about to discover that their options are narrowing rapidly. He checked his watch. And in approximately 90 minutes, they're going to narrow even further. The process server delivers the lawsuit at noon. Thanksgiving Eve. While they're probably planning their country club dinner, completely unaware that their entire world is about to implode. Angela pulled out another folder. I also have this. Video footage from your parents' house. The Ring doorbell camera you probably don't know exists. I checked the account, it's still registered to your father's email, which means Ryan and Linda either forgot about it or don't know how to access the footage. She opened her laptop, queued up a video. This is from 3 weeks ago. The footage showed Linda and Diane standing on the front porch, clearly visible in afternoon light. The audio was crystal clear. I'm telling you, Linda said on the video, Emily's becoming a problem. She keeps asking about the mortgage, about equity, about why we're still in the house. Diane's response was equally clear. So stop taking her calls. You've managed her this long. She's too timid to actually do anything. She'll complain, then she'll keep paying. That's what she does. There were 17 more videos, Angela said. Conversations about you, about the money, about strategies to keep you paying and quiet. Linda discussing how to handle it if you ever asked to see the will. Ryan practicing excuses for why they needed just one more year of help. Your sister-in-law even jokes in one video about how well-trained you are. Her words, not mine. I watched my own erasure documented in high definition, archived in cloud storage, waiting all this time to be discovered. Did you send these to the prosecutor? I asked. Not yet, Angela said. That's your decision. This crosses from civil fraud into criminal territory. Wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly elder abuse for exploiting your grief state. Thomas can win your lawsuit without these videos. But if you want Ryan and Linda to face criminal charges, these videos make that case airtight. The weight of that decision pressed down on me. Criminal charges meant possible prison time. It meant destroying Ryan's career, Linda's reputation, Jessica's stability. It meant our family fracturing beyond any hope of repair. But then I thought about Sunday dinner, about being uninvited from Thanksgiving, about 6 years of being treated like an ATM while being mocked on camera. I thought about my parents' careful protections, about the will they'd crafted to prevent exactly this situation, about how Ryan had spit on their memory by stealing from his own sister. Send everything to the prosecutor, I said. All of it. If Ryan and Linda want to play hardball, they're about to learn I brought a whole different game. Thomas nodded approvingly. I'll make the call this afternoon. He glanced at Angela, who pulled out one final folder. There's one more thing you should know before the process server arrives. Angela's expression shifted to something almost apologetic. Jessica, your niece. She's not uninvolved. She knows everything. Angela slid her phone across the table, displaying a series of text messages. These are from Jessica's social media accounts. Public posts, nothing hacked or obtained illegally. She's been quite vocal about the family situation with her friends. The messages made my stomach turn. Jessica had posted in a group chat just 2 days ago, the day after Sunday's dinner. Finally got rid of Aunt Emily for Thanksgiving LOL. Mom says she was getting too nosy about money stuff. Good riddance to the family charity case. Another post from 6 months earlier read, my parents are saints for putting up with Aunt E. She acts like she's doing us this huge favor, but it's literally the least she can do since she has no life and no kids. Where else would her money go? The casual cruelty of 16-year-old certainty, the complete lack of awareness that the money she dismissed so easily had been funding her private school, her phone, her entire comfortable existence. Rebecca leaned over to read, then sat back with disgust. She's been raised by Linda. What did we expect? But Angela wasn't finished. There's more. She swiped to another screenshot. This one is from last month. Jessica asking her friend about legal emancipation, whether someone could be forced to keep paying for family members if they wanted to stop. Her friend joked that she should just be grateful for the free ride. Jessica responded that her mom said they had paperwork proving the house was theirs, and if Emily ever made trouble, they'd show she abandoned the family after the grandparents died. So Linda's been coaching her, I said quietly. Teaching her the official story. Making sure even Jessica could testify that I was the negligent one, the one who walked away while they nobly carried on alone. Angela nodded. Jessica has been prepared as a potential witness if you ever challenge them. Linda's smarter than she looks. She's been building a narrative for 6 years, with her daughter as a supporting character who believes every word. The conference room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in with the understanding that this wasn't just Ryan and Linda's betrayal. It was systematic, multi-generational, carefully maintained. Even the child had been weaponized against me. Can we use these posts? I asked Thomas. He considered carefully. In civil court, absolutely. They establish knowledge and intent. They show this wasn't just Ryan being careless but a family-wide conspiracy to defraud you. In criminal proceedings, they'd be more complicated since Jessica is a minor, but they demonstrate the household's collective attitude toward your financial contributions. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again, but this time when I answered, Ryan's voice exploded through the speaker. What the hell did you do? The bank froze our account. They're saying fraud investigation. Emily, you need to fix this right now. His voice carried that particular pitch of panic mixed with anger, the sound of someone whose comfortable world had just shifted beneath their feet. I put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. I didn't do anything, Ryan. I just stopped pretending everything was fine. There was breathing on the other end, heavy and fast. You can't do this. This is our home. Our home? I kept my voice level. Ryan, when did you plan to tell me that Mom and Dad left me half the house? The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Who told you that? He finally asked, and the admission in those words was complete. Not a denial. Not confusion. Just the question of who'd exposed his lie. Thomas Hayes told me, I said. You know, the attorney who executed Mom and Dad's will? The one who sent me 3 registered letters that mysteriously never reached me? The one you probably hoped I'd never contact? Ryan, you forged my signature. You committed bank fraud. You stole over $400,000 from me. And you did it while I was grieving our parents. Linda's voice cut in from somewhere in the background, sharp and commanding. Don't say anything else, Ryan. She's recording you. She's right, I should mention that, I said calmly. But Ryan, I'm curious. When exactly were you planning to tell me the truth? When the house was paid off in 20 years? When I'd paid another $500,000 into a property you claimed was solely yours? Or were you just going to keep taking my money forever while slowly pushing me out of the family? You pushed yourself out, Ryan shot back, finding his anger again. You were never around. Never made time for us. We invited you to things and you always had excuses. We had to build our life without you. The revisionist history was almost impressive in its completeness. The Ring doorbell footage says otherwise, I replied. Want me to play the video of Linda telling her sister how well trained I am? How I'm too timid to ever actually challenge anything? Or maybe the one where you practice excuses for why you need 1 more year of my money? The silence on the other end was absolute. You've been spying on us, Ryan finally managed. You put cameras on our house. Dad put cameras on his house, I corrected. The house he left to both of us. The house you stole. And Ryan, those cameras have been recording for 6 years. Every conversation, every lie, every moment you've spent spending my money while mocking me behind my back. All documented, all saved, all about to become evidence. Linda grabbed the phone. Her voice was pure venom. You vindictive little witch. After everything we've done for you, giving you a place in this family, including you in holidays. This is how you repay us? By trying to destroy us 2 days before Thanksgiving? I didn't destroy anything, Linda. You did that yourselves when you decided to uninvite me for being difficult. You should have just let me come to Thanksgiving. You should have said thank you occasionally. You should have been honest. But you got greedy and you got sloppy, and now you're going to pay for it. We'll fight this, Linda hissed. We'll get lawyers. We'll show everyone what you really are, how you're trying to steal from your own brother, from your niece. Good luck with that, I said. You'll be served with a lawsuit in about an hour. The bank's already investigating. The prosecutor's office will have all the evidence by end of business today. And Linda? That mortgage payment you're expecting? It's never coming. The December payment, January, all of them. Done. Figure it out yourselves. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding my system, but beneath the fear was something else. Relief. 6 years of being the good sister, the helpful one, the doormat who kept writing checks and accepting crumbs of inclusion. It was finished. Thomas checked his watch. Process server will be there in 45 minutes. I've instructed him to document their reaction if possible. It's not necessary for the case, but it might be satisfying for you. He wasn't wrong. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing. They gave you no choice. I know, I said, though part of me still felt the weight of it. This was my brother. My only sibling. The person who'd taught me to swim, who'd scared away my middle school bullies, who'd stood beside me at our parents' funeral. But that Ryan had disappeared somewhere along the way, replaced by a man who could look his sister in the eye and lie for 6 years straight while stealing her inheritance. Angela packed up her folders. I'll keep monitoring the Ring camera. If they try to remove it or destroy evidence, that's obstruction. I've also got someone watching the house in case they try to move assets or hide documents. Thomas has already frozen their bank accounts pending the fraud investigation, so they can't liquidate and run. They're contained. The military precision of it should have felt like overkill, but after seeing the extent of their deception, every precaution felt justified. My phone exploded again. This time it was Diane, Linda's sister. The vitriol in her text messages was impressive. You're tearing apart a family over money. Your parents would be ashamed. Ryan and Linda took you in, gave you a place to belong, and this is how you repay them. You'll regret this. I showed the message to Thomas. Is that a threat? He asked mildly. Sounds like a threat. Should I forward it to the police? I'll handle it, I said, typing a response. Diane, your sister forged my signature, committed bank fraud, and stole over $400,000 from me. I didn't tear apart the family. Linda and Ryan did that when they decided theft was easier than honesty. And for the record, I was never taken in. I was erased. There's a difference. The response came immediately. You're lying. Ryan would never. Followed by, I'm calling you. She did, and I answered on speaker. Diane's voice was shrill with indignation. Emily, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to stop this immediately. Ryan and Linda are good people who opened their home to you. I've never lived in that house, Diane. Not once. I've been paying the mortgage on a property I co-own while living in my own apartment downtown. Your sister uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I asked too many questions about money. My money. Money I've been paying for 6 years. That's not how Linda tells it, Diane said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Linda tells it wrong, I replied. I have tax returns, bank statements, video footage, legal documents, and a will that proves everything I'm saying. What does Linda have? Stories. And Diane, here's something you should know since you're probably going to get dragged into this. Remember that $5,000 you borrowed from me for your daughter's wedding? I have the texts where you promised to pay it back within a year. That was 2 years ago. I never pressed you because we're family. But since we're apparently keeping score now, you owe me $5,000 plus interest. The line went dead. Rebecca started laughing, couldn't help herself. You're on fire today. I don't feel like I'm on fire, I admitted. I feel like I'm drowning and fighting back is the only way to survive. Thomas's phone buzzed. He checked it, then looked up with a grim smile. Process server just arrived at the house. He's reporting that both Ryan and Linda are home. Serving the papers now. We waited in silence, the seconds ticking by with excruciating slowness. Then Thomas's phone buzzed again. Served. Both defendants received copies. Linda attempted to refuse service. Ryan accepted and immediately began making phone calls. Video documentation complete. It was done. The lawsuit was real, the accusations formal, the legal machinery grinding into motion. Somewhere across town, my brother and his wife were reading through pages of legalese that spelled out exactly how thoroughly they'd destroyed their lives. They'd have the weekend to find an attorney, to try to mount a defense, to realize that the difficult sister had been difficult for a reason. Angela closed her laptop. I'll have my full report ready by Monday, including analysis of their financial capacity to pay what they owe you. Preliminary assessment is their leverage to the limit. The house is their only real asset. Without your mortgage payments, they can't sustain their lifestyle for more than 60 days, 90 at absolute maximum. So they'll have to sell, I said. Or declare bankruptcy. Either way, I get the house. Thomas nodded. Most likely scenario is they'll try to negotiate a settlement. Offer you a percentage to go away quietly. But with the evidence we have, there's no reason to settle for less than everything you're owed. The house becomes yours, they pay damages, or the court forces a sale and you get your share plus compensation. They lose either way. My phone rang again. This time it was Jessica. I almost declined, then reconsidered. Against my better judgment, I answered. Aunt Emily, Jessica's voice was small, younger than her 16 years. Is it true? What my parents did? That they stole from you? I closed my eyes, tried to find words that wouldn't destroy a kid who'd been raised on lies. Jessica, your parents made some very bad choices. Choices that hurt me financially and emotionally. I tried to help them, and they took advantage of that help. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, but yes, it's true. She was quiet for a moment. Mom's crying. Dad's throwing things. They're fighting about lawyers and money and they keep saying your name. Jessica paused. I didn't know. About the house, about Grandma and Grandpa's will. They told me the house was theirs, that you were just helping out because you didn't have your own family to spend money on. The casual cruelty of that phrasing, even secondhand, stung. That's not true, Jessica. I helped because I loved your father and I wanted to support you all after we lost my parents. But your mom and dad lied to me for 6 years. They forged documents, committed fraud, and when I finally started asking questions, they uninvited me from Thanksgiving and called me difficult. Are you going to send them to jail? She asked quietly. I don't know yet, I said honestly. That's up to the prosecutor and the court. But Jessica, what they did was illegal. It was wrong. And they did it knowing it was wrong, planning it, hiding it. Actions have consequences. Even for family. Especially for family. She hung up without saying goodbye. Rebecca touched my arm gently. That was hard. She's a kid, I said. A kid who's been taught that using people is normal, that family exists to be exploited, that money matters more than relationships. Linda raised her that way. I just hope Jessica learns something different from all this. Thomas began packing up his files. We're set for now. I'll be monitoring the situation over the holiday. If Ryan and Linda do anything stupid, and they probably will, document everything and call me immediately. He paused at the door. Emily, you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it yet. But your parents would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring at the city spread out below through the windows. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving. Across town, my brother's family was imploding. The country club reservation would probably be cancelled. The perfect holiday Linda had planned, the one too exclusive to include the difficult sister, would be spent with lawyers and panic and the dawning realization that their comfortable fraud had finally caught up with them. And me? I'd spend it alone, probably, without family or tradition or the illusion that blood meant anything more than shared DNA and convenient lies. But I'd spend it free. Free from being used. Free from the weight of subsidizing people who despised me. Free from wondering why I was never enough, never valued, never wanted except for what I could provide. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Ryan. Just, please. One word, carrying the weight of 6 years and $400,000 and a family shattered beyond repair. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The process had started. The evidence was filed. The truth was coming out whether anyone wanted it or not. Tomorrow, while they faced the wreckage of their choices, I'd be giving thanks for something I'd almost forgotten existed. The ability to say no. The strength to demand justice. And the knowledge that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only love what you can give them. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day that made Portland look like a postcard. I woke in my loft to silence, no family obligations, no forced cheerfulness, just the quiet hum of a city taking a collective breath before the holiday chaos. My phone sat on the nightstand, notification light blinking with messages I hadn't checked since last night. I ignored it and made coffee instead. Rebecca had invited me to her family's dinner, a boisterous gathering of aunts and uncles and cousins who barely knew me but would welcome me anyway with the easy generosity of people who had nothing to hide. I'd declined. Today felt like a day for solitude, for processing what I'd set in motion, for sitting with the uncomfortable truth that doing the right thing rarely felt good in the moment. By noon, my phone had accumulated 47 messages. Most were from Ryan and Linda, escalating from pleading to angry to desperate and back again. Linda's messages had a manic quality, bouncing between threats to hire the best lawyers in Portland and offers to discuss a reasonable settlement. Ryan's were simpler, more defeated. Each one variations on the same theme of how could you do this to us, to family, to Jessica. Not once did either of them apologize. Not once did they acknowledge what they'd actually done. The victimhood was absolute, the denial complete. There were messages from Diane too, and even one from Brian, all painting me as the villain in a story they'd convinced themselves was true. But there was also a message from an unknown number that made me sit up straighter. Miss Carter, this is Sandra Mitchell from Premium Properties. I understand there may be some legal complications regarding 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Your brother contacted me about listing the property, but I've since discovered a lease pendens filing. I wanted to reach out directly to let you know that if you're interested in selling once the legal matters are resolved, I'd be happy to discuss representation. The house should fetch well above market value in the current climate. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. The real estate agent, sensing which way the wind was blowing, had already jumped ship from Ryan's sinking vessel to mine. I didn't respond, but I saved the message. It might be useful later, when the dust settled and decisions had to be made about what to do with a house that had become more symbol than home. Thomas called at 2 in the afternoon. Happy Thanksgiving, he said dryly. Thought you'd want to know that Ryan's attorney reached out an hour ago. They want to meet Monday morning to discuss settlement options. That was fast. They don't have much choice. The bank's investigation is moving forward, and I made sure the prosecutor's office received all of Angela's documentation this morning. Ryan's attorney is smart enough to know that fighting this case is suicide. They'll try to negotiate something that keeps Ryan out of prison and salvages whatever they can financially. What do you want me to do? I asked. Come to the meeting Monday, Thomas said. Hear what they have to say. But Emily, remember that you hold all the cards here. They need you to agree to any settlement. You don't need anything from them except what you're already owed. Don't let guilt or family obligation make you accept less than you deserve. After we hung up, I finally let myself look at the messages from Jessica. There were 3, sent in the early morning hours when teenagers couldn't sleep and adults pretended problems would solve themselves. The first read, I looked up the court documents online. Everything you said is true. I can't believe they lied to me my whole life. The second, Mom keeps saying you're overreacting, that families work these things out, but I read what they did. The forged signature, the fake loan papers. That's not overreacting. That's crime. The third, sent at 4 in the morning, I'm sorry. For what I said about you, for what I posted online. I didn't understand. I'm really sorry. I stared at those messages for a long time, this apology from a kid who'd been raised to see me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. Part of me wanted to respond with grace, to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she'd been a child manipulated by adults who should have known better. But another part of me, the part that was still raw from Sunday's dinner and 6 years of casual dismissal, wasn't ready to absolve anyone yet. I put the phone down without responding. The afternoon stretched into evening. I made myself a simple dinner, nothing that required effort or tradition. The city lights came on as darkness fell, thousands of windows glowing with families gathered around tables, sharing meals and stories and the comfortable fiction that blood always meant loyalty. I wondered what was happening at 847 Maple Ridge Drive, whether Ryan and Linda had managed to cobble together any kind of Thanksgiving or if they were drowning in legal documents and panic. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, and on impulse, I pulled up the county property records. There it was, 847 Maple Ridge Drive, purchased by Robert and Margaret Carter in 1998 for $320,000. Refinanced in 2017 by Ryan Michael Carter, current value assessed at $675,000. And now, as of yesterday, marked with a lease pendens that flagged it as disputed property. 25 years of my parents' investment, their home, their legacy, frozen in legal limbo because their son had chosen theft over honesty. I clicked through to the original deed, saw my parents' signatures from 1998, young and confident, building something they thought would outlast them. And it would, just not in the way they'd imagined. Not as a home passed lovingly to the next generation, but as evidence in a fraud case, an asset to be divided by courts and lawyers and the cold mathematics of justice. Sunday morning, Rebecca showed up at my door with leftover turkey and her particular brand of no-nonsense friendship. "You're not spending the whole weekend alone," she announced, pushing past me into the loft. "I brought food, wine, and every piece of financial analysis you're going to need for Monday's meeting. We're going to make sure you walk into that room prepared for every trick Ryan's lawyer might try." We spread documents across my dining table, building the case not just for what I was owed but for what I deserved. $402,000, Rebecca calculated, tapping her calculator. That's conservative. Thomas could argue for more, especially if he factors in emotional distress, which is absolutely legitimate given 6 years of systematic deception and familial alienation. She looked up at me seriously. "Emily, you need to decide what you actually want out of this. Is it the money? The house? Watching them suffer? Because that decision will shape every negotiation moving forward." "I want what's mine," I said slowly. "The house that my parents meant me to have. The money I paid that I shouldn't have had to pay. And I want them to admit what they did, not just legally but actually acknowledge it. I want Ryan to stop pretending he's the victim here." Rebecca nodded. 2 out of 3 you'll probably get. That last one, actual accountability from people who've spent 6 years lying to themselves as much as to you? That's harder to legislate. Monday morning came with rain, the kind of steady northwest drizzle that made the city feel gray and determined. Thomas's conference room was the same as before, but this time the other side of the table held Ryan, Linda, and their attorney, a tired-looking man named Peter Sutton who had the expression of someone who'd drawn the short straw. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Peter spoke first, his voice carefully neutral. "Miss Carter, my clients want to express their deep regret for the misunderstanding that's led to this unfortunate situation. They're prepared to offer a settlement that they believe is fair and equitable to all parties." "Misunderstanding," I repeated, the word hanging in the air like an accusation. "Your clients committed bank fraud, forged my signature, and stole over $400,000 from me. That's not a misunderstanding. That's crime." Peter cleared his throat. "Regardless of how we characterize the situation, my clients are offering to deed their half of the property to you immediately, giving you full ownership. In exchange, you would forgive the past mortgage payments and agree not to pursue any further legal action, civil or criminal. Essentially, you get the house, they walk away clean. So they steal from me for 6 years, and their consequence is having to give me what was legally mine all along?" I looked at Ryan directly for the first time. "You get to keep $400,000 of my money, face no criminal charges, and walk away like nothing happened?" Ryan couldn't hold my gaze. Linda's face was stone, her earlier confidence replaced with brittle desperation. Thomas leaned forward. "My client rejects that offer entirely. Here's our counteroffer. Ryan and Linda deed their 50% share to Miss Carter immediately. They also pay her $402,000 in restitution, representing the mortgage payments she made plus the fair market rent she should have received. They cover all legal fees, both ours and theirs. And they provide a written statement acknowledging the fraud, to be filed with the court. In exchange, Miss Carter will consider not pressing for criminal prosecution. That's impossible, Linda burst out. We don't have that kind of money. We can't pay that. Then you'll lose the house in foreclosure, Thomas said calmly, and Miss Carter will still sue you for damages. The judgment will follow you for decades. Your wages will be garnished. Your credit will be destroyed. And the criminal charges will proceed regardless. This settlement is your only way to minimize the damage you've done to yourselves. The meeting devolved into arguments, calculations, desperate attempts by Peter to find middle ground that didn't exist. But in the end, the math was simple. Ryan and Linda had no leverage, no defense, no way out except through the narrow door Thomas had opened. They'd have to sell the house to pay me back, would walk away with almost nothing after the mortgage was satisfied and my restitution was paid, would spend years rebuilding from the wreckage of their own greed. We'll need time to consider, Peter finally said, gathering his papers with shaking hands. We'll have a response by end of week. You have 48 hours, Thomas countered. After that, we proceed to full litigation and criminal referral. No more extensions, no more negotiations. As they filed out, Ryan paused at the door. He said quietly, and in that moment he sounded like my brother again, like the person who'd existed before Linda and entitlement and 6 years of lies. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, would never be enough, but it was something. I nodded once, not trusting my voice, and let him leave. Thomas closed his portfolio with a satisfied snap. They'll accept. They have no choice. By Friday, you'll own that house outright, and you'll have a payment plan for the restitution. It won't feel like victory, but it's justice. He was right. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of something that should never have started, the closing of a door that should never have opened. But as I left his office and stepped out into the gray Portland morning, I felt lighter than I had in 6 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Well? I typed back, we won. Her response was immediate, damn right you did. Dinner tonight to celebrate? I smiled despite everything. Sure. But I'm buying. I can afford it now. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, and somewhere across town, my brother was learning the hardest lesson of his life. That family wasn't a license to exploit. That love had limits. And that some doors, once closed, locked behind you forever. I pulled out my keys and headed home, to the loft that had been my refuge, soon to plan what I'd do with a house full of memories and empty of trust. The difficult sister had won. And in winning, had finally learned to value herself more than the people who'd only valued her money. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.